Yeah.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Census Roadshow. My name is Lorraine MacDonald, and I'm part of the Census Engagement team. And I'm here today to just provide you with a brief overview of the upcoming changes to Census in 2027. I'll then pass you over to my colleague Bernie, who'll go through the 2022 Census outputs, and then give you a demo on the website. Okay, so just to give you an update on the census to date. So the 1901 and the 1911 census data was taken under, has been relaunched by the National Archives, apologies, and which they're making it much easier to search through on their website. They're also busy digitizing the 1926 census, which is due for release next year after 100 years. And the release date will be the 18th of April, which is the date that it was recorded back in 1926. As you're all aware, there was no census between 1911 and 1926 due to the Rising and the War of Independence. And the most recent census was taken in 2022, which Bernie will talk you through. Our next census should be in 2026. However, as we receive government approval to bring the next census online and to give us time to prepare, the government has decided to have the next census 5 years after the last one, which will be 2027. Now, as EU regulations require censuses to be taken at the end of each decade, we will then have to realign with this provision and schedule the following census for 2031, which will only be 4 years after the next census. We're also looking into the future of census and what it might look after 2031. We held our first consultation and a workshop in Dublin Castle last year. Now, we are currently waiting for a European directive on population, and this may affect changes for 2031. The CSO, like other statistical bodies in the European Union, are required to provide the EU with census type data on an annual basis. Now, as you can imagine, it's not possible for us to run a census every year. So we are looking into an Irish administrative census. It's called IPEDS, and it stands for Irish Population Estimates from Administrative Data Sources. And we have tested a few frontier publications on this already. Okay, but for now, let's just focus on what we're currently working on, which is the Census 2027 project. Now, as I've already said, for the first time in Irish history, the census will be available online, which is a significant milestone in how we're going to collect this national data. When considering this huge change, our focus is very much on you, the public, and how this will affect you. And we are fully aware that there will be some who may want to continue to complete their census on paper. So that's why in 2027, the census will adopt a multi-mode approach, offering both digital and paper options. And this is to ensure accessibility and convenience for everyone. Okay, so while we're maintaining the traditional paper form and adding an online option, this still represents a shift from the processes used in the previous census. So for example, in previous census, everyone completed their paper form on a specific date, known as census night, and recorded their location as it was on that night. Now for 27, to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to complete their census form, whether that be online or by requesting a paper version, we're introducing a dedicated census period. Now this census period lasting is approximately 3 weeks we're looking at, and it will take place in advance of census night. And it's designed to give people the flexibility to respond at a time that suits them best. When filling out the census form, individuals will be asked to record their usual place of residence, rather than previously it was the location where you happen to be when completing this form. Also looking ahead for 2027, we're updating the role and the title of the enumerator. So the new title will be Census Support Officer, and this is reflecting a more supportive and service-orientated approach. So their primary role will be to assist individuals in accessing their census form, whether that be online or through the paper form. So now, as with every transformational change, you need to test and prepare. And that's exactly what we did. So we held a pilot in September 2024. Maybe some of you were involved, depending on where you lived, because the pilot covered 6 counties, 44 areas, and 20,000 households. So the 3 main objectives of the pilot was, 1, to test the new questions, which included parking, gender identity, sexual orientation, mental health, and education. But it also allowed us to test the online response option and to test the changes to the data collection process with this move to the online. So what were the outcomes of the pilot? Well, the pilot was a great learning process for us, as you can imagine, but it also gave us a great insight into the online aspect. So for example, almost 80% of those who completed their pilot form did so online, with the remaining 20 requesting paper forms. But of those that did complete online, 4 out of 5 households did so in one sitting, which was very encouraging. As I said, you will have the option to start your form and then go back at a later stage, but a lot of people found that it was easier to just complete it straight through, which is brilliant. It also gave us an average time for completing the form, which again was great for us, because up to that it was a guessing game for us. So what we learned was that on average it took 22 minutes for a 2-person household and 28 minutes for a 4-person household. And from that we could see that, you know, once you complete the first part of the form, which was the household part, and completed it for 1 person, any additional people after that took approximately 3 minutes. We were also curious to see how the public would react to the introduction of the dedicated census period, as opposed to the traditional single date approach of census night. And it was very encouraging to see that over 3,000 forms were submitted online ahead of pilot night. Okay, so what's next? Well, now that the pilot has finished and census is fast approaching, we're working through all the feedback we got from the pilot, and we continue to develop our online systems. We've reconvened the census advisory group, and the final recommendations as to what questions should be on the 20 form have been made. We're currently preparing the census memo. Now, this will feed into getting government approval for the census order. And the census order enables the CSO to undertake the census in 2027. Once all that is done, then we will be able to finalize the questionnaire and to get the paper forms printed. The census recruitment campaign also starts next year. So it's a huge recruitment campaign we run. We will be recruiting over 4,000 field staff. And we will do that through 3 separate competitions next year. So as you can see, a lot of work goes into preparing for the census as a paper form, but now with the online option, we have been very busy trying to get it all up and set up. So part of this is, like, we wanted to introduce you to this changes to you and just advise you of how maybe for census in 27, our aim is to make sure everyone is aware of the changes and the options available to them. And we're hoping that maybe in the late 2026 and early 27, you may be able to help us reach in your local communities. And we hope that maybe it's in the form of you advising your members, like, you know, to highlight the major changes and reassure them that these changes are real. You know, that it's not a spoof or a scam or whatever. And also, you know, emphasize why it's important for the members to be informed early so that they can get their head around the changes to it. Also, maybe you could advise or share the timeline for the Field Support Officers recruitment campaign, encourage members to consider applying or to spread the word within their networks. Another way would be to provide support and advice. So explain the different options available to members, like, you know, for example, the online versus the paper form, and volunteering to help them access the form if possible. So they're just a couple of options that we were hoping that maybe next year you may be able to support us in. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my the presentation. It was a short one. It's just really to highlight that these changes are coming, and with your support, we would hope that we would be able to reach as many networks in your area, your communities or whatever, to advise them of this. Just before I'm going to pass you over to Bernie, I just want to highlight that we do have a census inquiry team who, after this presentation today, or if you have any questions on how to access information, if you contact the census inquiries team, they will be able to assist you on any of them. The information you're looking for. And Bernie then is going to go through the interactive maps and that, so she will be able to advise you of the contacts for that then later as well. Okay, so I'm going to pass you over to Bernie now, and thank you, everyone.
How you doing? Thank you very much, Lorraine. Can you all hear me?
We can do, Bernie.
Perfect. And you can see my slides there.
I can, of course.
So as Lorraine said, my name is Bernie Casey, and I'm working in the dissemination section since 2015, in fact, and I'm in the Central Statistics Office since 1989. So I don't tell that to many people, so you're privileged there. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our results, and then let you give you a demonstration of our website. I'm just getting these slides to move here. Got them to move. Brilliant. So Ireland is a country which experienced a lot of population change and much migration, and we need a census to measure this accurately. So other EU countries have registers as part of law, like the legal requirement to inform if you're in the state for maybe 3 months or more, and even if you move to a different area in a particular European state, you would have to notify them. So this would take a long time for Ireland to set up, and we've been doing traditional census, in fact, since 1841. It was our first major modern census, and then there've been 10 or 5 years intervals since. So what information do we get? We get personal information, obviously the demographics of people, ages, average age, religion, numerous what language they speak. And then on the other side, we get the very first questions you fill out in your census form is on household information. So you can see from the infographic there, we get information on house ownership, average rent, renewable resources, and there's a plethora of stuff. So I'll just move on here. Perfect. So the most recent census took place on the 3rd of April 2022, and that was 6 years instead of the 5 since the previous census because of the pandemic. And we established that there was 5.15 million people in the state, and this was an increase of almost 390,000 people since the last census, or 8% over the 6-year period. And when you average that out, yearly, it represents an increase of 1.3%. And then if you compare the previous census period from 2011 to 2016, the total growth was only 4%. And when you average that out over the 5 years, it was 0.7%. So from the graph here, you can shows the data from 1841 to 2022, and you can see that Census 2022 marked the first time since before the famine in 171 years that the population of Ireland has gone over the 5 million people. So after a decline since 1841, Ireland recorded its lowest population in 1961 when it stood as 2.8 million people. And you hear that a lot on the news. A lot of people would mention, 1961, there was only 2.8 million people in the country in 1960. But since then, you can see it has begun to increase. And in 2022, it was 83% higher than the lowest then back in 1961. So this is the population of Kerry. So back in 1841, the population of Kerry was nearly 294,000, and in 2022 it was nearly it was 156.5 thousand. That means that the current population is only 53% of the pre-famine back in 1841. 1971 actually saw its lowest figure, and that was nearly at 113,000, and increased each census, except for a small dip, like so many counties in 1991 after the late 80s recession. There's a small dip there. You can see on the just on the graph, the small dip. So, looking at the whole country, the results show that every county recorded population growth between 2016 and 2022. And from the shading in the map, you can see that we have increases in the population since 2016, ranging from 5% in Donegal, Kilkenny and Tipperary to 14% in Longford. Population growth tended to be stronger in the east of the country, with Meath growing by 13%, followed by Fingal at 12 and Kildare at 11. The percentage increase for Kerry was 6% since the last census, when Kerry in 2016 was 147,707. I am clicking here, but it's not moving. Just one moment, sorry. Right, here we go. So all the counties had an increase in average age between 2016 and 2022. And the average age for the population increased from 37.4 years in 2016, and now in 2022 it's 38.8. So Fingal, Kildare and Meath continued to be the counties again with the youngest age on average. Fingal was 36.2. Mayo, Kerry, Roscommon and Leitrim had the oldest populations at 41 and 42 years. And the average age in Kerry in 2022 was 41.5, compared to in April 16 it was 40.2. So this is a population pyramid, and it shows a clear picture of the number of males and females at each age. And if you notice here, it's single year of age on the axis there, and you have males and females on each side. So I'm going to show you three graphs now. This is the 2011. And if you look closely at the difference between 2016 and 2022, and if you notice the younger age group, and you can see and have a look, if it does move for me. I've done at least 20 presentations, and this is the first time the clicking has stuck. So this is 2016, and then this is 2022. So while you can see the pyramid here, it has the largest number of people are around 12 to 13, and then 40 to 42. Overall, what we're seeing is the evidence of an aging population. Older age groups grew in size while younger declined, and you can see the decline from the 12 going in there at the end. So the highest increase in population numbers was seen amongst the over 70s, increasing by 25%. And there was a 7% fall in the number of people aged 0 to 9. And there was a 4% fall in the number of people aged 25 to 39. So, and this is Kerry's population pyramid. And you can see so this is the distribution of the 156.5 males and females. So it appears more jagged, but it's because of the low numbers, and you know, a small difference between one age and other is more obvious. So of the Kerry population, 79,000 were female and 77, 387 were male, which means that there was 98 males for every 100 females. And in Ireland overall, that is the same, that there's 98, sorry, there's 2,604,000 females and 2,544 males, which is again 98 males for every 100 females. I'm just willing this to go on. I'm moving. Here we go. So the next slide I'm going to show you is some information on housing and the housing stock. So the total stock of habitable permanent housing dwellings in 2022 was over 2.1 million, and that was up 5% from 2016. And for context, do you remember I said the population increased by 8% over that period? But the number of occupied dwellings increased by the 8% in line with the population increase, while the vacant dwellings fell by nearly 20,000, 11%. There was also nearly 67,000 unoccupied holiday homes, and that was up 8% on 2016. The growth in the housing stock varied from county, but it did increase in all counties between 2016 and 2022. And the fastest growth was in Meath and Kildare, both up 11%. And in Kerry, the housing stock was up by 4%. And housing stock was the slowest in Tipperary, Donegal and Leitrim, and it was up 2% in those counties. So here is a table of the housing stock and the breakdown, and you can see the numbers there. And you can see that the occupied housing had grew by 7%, and there was 8,487 vacant homes. However, the rate of the vacancy decreased from 13% in 2016 to 11% in 2022. So this is an example of what we can do with our mapping GeoHive. And this is the occupancy status of permanent dwellings on census night by the small areas. And there's over 19,000 square small areas in the country. And this is Kerry broken up by the small areas. And what I'm displaying here is the vacant homes. So you can see where the higher number of vacant homes is the darker blue color. But just to say that, like many properties classed as vacant in the census may only be vacant for a short time, and for a wide variety of reasons. So including homes for sale, rent, built or renovation, or owner in a nursing home, etc. However, there was more than 3,105 dwellings classified as vacant both in 2016 and 2022 in Kerry, which could be more of an indication of a longer term vacancy. Nationally, that figure was just under 48,000. So I always say this is my favorite graph. This is the home ownership rates and by age. So if you can see this, it's single year of age from age 20 up to 84. And it's the rate of home ownership varied by the age of the head of the household. So younger people are more likely to rent in the dark blue, while the older people are more likely to own their home in the green, or owned with a mortgage, and orange, owned outright. So the general trend over the last few censuses, and we don't need to tell you this, is that people are getting older before owning their own home. Back in 1991 census, half of the householders owned their own home, either with or without a mortgage, by the age of 26. At this age that marks the changeover to ownership from non-ownership increased to 35 in 2016, and it was actually 36 in census 2022. And in Kerry, that age was also 36 years as well. And the age which I'm looking at is the other end of the spectrum, the age at which the majority of owners owned their dwellings outright stood at 59. So in other words, at 59, more than half of people have finished their mortgage or loans at 59 years of age. And in Kerry, that age is 57. So Census 2022 was the first time we asked how many bedrooms. Before, we used to ask how many rooms is in your house. And I think people equate bedrooms, it's a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom house, more easier to identify. So here we have the breakdown, and you can see the breakdown from the state and Kerry's breakdown here. And there is nothing, it's more or less in line with the state, the bedroom breakdown in Kerry. But it's interesting, the type of houses we've been asked for a long time. And in the last census, we actually asked the enumerators to ask to reduce response burden on the householder, and asked to, when they were going door to door, to say what type of house it is, whether detached, semi-detached. So 66% in Kerry are detached home, and rather than 41% in the state. And you can see the difference in the semi-detached there, and the terrace, and obviously the flat or apartments that would be more urban. So another new question we asked was on renewable energy. So looking at the characteristics, was asked for the first time in Census 2022. So nearly a quarter, 23% of households reported that they use renewable energy sources. The use of solar panels was reported by 6% of households, ranging from 3% of households in Dublin to 11% in households in Meath. And over 70% of the dwellings built since 2006 used at least one renewable energy source. And over 40% of the same cohort had heat pumps. Approximately 30% had solar panels. And this map shows the distribution of the solar renewable energy. And you can see that in Kerry, that there was 4,264 dwellings that had a solar energy, renewable energy source, and that represents 7.3% of the occupied households. So we'll have a look at work and commuting. So a principal economic status, on the census form, you're asked, whether you're unemployed, you're not in the labour force, you're retired. So this figure illustrates how the share of the population at work has been increasing since 2011, with a corresponding decrease in the unemployment in orange. So if you can see, since 2011, you can see the dark, the first line here, the dark green line, has been increasing, and then you can see the orange has reducing since 2011. So the census unemployment definition is based on the self-declared principal economic status of people completing the census form. So combining the people at work and the unemployment gives us the share of the population in the labour force. And this has increased steadily over the 30 years between 1986 and 2006. And you can see the addition of the green and the orange, you can see, has been increasing. Since 2006, the portion is the labour force, and that has since then it's slightly fallen since 2016. You can see it's just likely now. So what has been driving this change? Just over 1 in 10 people aged 15 and over are students, and this has stayed relatively constant over the census. So the students there are in the next green, and it's roughly 10%. And you can see that there's been a big change in the share of the population looking after home or family over the time. Looking after is in the blue. And in 1986, there was, I'll just see here again. It was 26%, 26%. This blue represents in 1986. And it's down to 7% in 2022 that are looking after home and family. And we also, you would imagine with this that there would be much more labour force, but the shortfall there is being compensated by the rise in the proportion of retired people. So you can see the number of the retired is the next colour green, and you can see the huge increase of the retirement population due to the ageing population. So this is a pie chart of the principal economic status of Kerry. So you can see from this pie chart that 53%, which is 67,545 of the Kerry's population, 15 years and over, are working, and 19% are retired in 2022. 10% are students, and only 7% are looking after the home and family, which is the state's total that I just said. So working from home, we asked a question in the census in 2022, and in Kerry, 17,119 people said they worked from home at least one day a week, and this represents 25% of the workforce, and the national figure was 32%. I wish to say that the pause is just for you to collect your thoughts, but it's actually me clicking and clicking and nothing happening. Just 1 minute. Here we go. Here we go. So where are these workers? So this is the top 5 broad industrial groups in Kerry. So wholesale retail sector accounted for the largest number of workers in the county, with almost 8,800. Human health and social work activities are the next largest, with over 7,600, followed by accommodation and food service activities with more than 6,700. And when you look at the graph there and compare the 5 groups, you can see that the education industry, there's huge increase. So the blue is 2016 and the green is 2022, and you can see there's a huge difference between the education in 16 and 2022, and it went from 5,215 to 6,340 in 2022. So this is interesting. This is the day type population in Kerry. So of the 67,500 people that we said that work, we can code destinations for 51,000 people. So these are people that are not mobile workers, and that we could there was an identifiable place of work address that we could code. So 51,000. And then when we look at these, we can see that 44,500 work and live in the county, which is very which is quite high. So, and only over 6,500 people leave the county for work, and 2,631 commute inside the county, which gives us the overall loss of nearly 4,000 people. So we have this data available on our website for each of the towns in Kerry, and it's interesting. You can see people commuting into the town, or where people are leaving, and I have that. It's 57069 if anyone wants to take a note of that, but I'll remind you when we're looking at the website. We also have research microdata file, which can be obtained by making an application to POWSCAR, which is on our website also, which is our place of work, school and college and childcare anonymised records on the website. So the census questions on commutings gives us insight in how and when people travel to the place of work, school, college and childcare. Childcare was their first time in 2022. So driving was the most popular means of travel among people aged 15 and over to work. Almost 2/3, 63% of the 1.3 million people travel to work, or 1.3 million travel to work as either a driver or a passenger in the car. So there were 58,541 people traveling to work in the county in Kerry in April 2022, and the majority of these drove to work with 38,084 people driving to work by car in 2022. There was 652 people traveling by bus. So looking at active travel, which would be walking and cycling, there was 5,303 people, and commuters in Dingle were the most likely to walk to work amongst the town, with a population of at least 1,500. At 44% of people in Dingle walked to work. So commuters in the county were travelling for longer than in April 2022, with an average journey of 24.6 minutes compared to 22.7 in 2016. And nationally, the average journey time increased also from 28.2 to 29.1 minutes between 2016 and 2022. So this graph, and I'll show you how to create, is the active travel. And I just picked out children between the age of 13 and 18. And if you can see the difference, is like the males on one side, females on the other, and you can see quite clearly then the difference between. Anecdotally, you'd say that the males were better at cycling than females. And some of this proves that's not true. So looking at this graph, you can see that Ballybunion is the only town that has equal girls and boys walking or cycling to school. You can see Ballybunion there is the exact same percentage. And Dingle, Killorgan and Kenmare has higher percentage of girls engaged in active travel. But in Listowel, more than twice the amount of boys walk or cycle to school. So 18% of girls travel to school and 38% of boys. And I presume there is probably a very good boys' school, and maybe the girls' school is further out. I'm not sure, but maybe you have the reason for that difference in Listowel. So now we'll have a few. I have a few more slides left. So this is just show you health and disability. So the general health question has 5 responses. You can be your range of health can range from very good, fair, bad to very bad. And the general health question had so just over 130,000 people in the county. 83% stated their health was very good or good in Census 2022. And this was down from 86% in 16 and 88% in 2011. But nationally, it was the same. It was 83% in 2022. It was down from 87 and then down from 88. So it's the trend. And from here, you see the town graph. Again, these are towns that are over 1,500. And you can see that Dingle shows a higher percentage of those who indicated that their health is very good or good. And Tralee showed the lesser percentage at 74%. However, if you bear in mind that the Tralee has over 26,000 people and Dingle's population was just within the range of 1,671, So in 2022, we had a change of our disability question. We asked what extent was your disability? Was it to a great extent or to some extent? So 1.1 million people experience a long-lasting difficulty to any extent, which is 22%. And in Kerry, you can see that it's more or less the same. It's slightly less at some extent at 13.4 there. So we also had a question on smoking tobacco products. So it was the first time. So almost 80% of the populations reported that either never smoked, represented in the teal figure here, or giving up smoke, seen in the orange in the figure. And 13% of the population smoked either daily, dark blue, or occasionally green in 2022. And there was a higher prevalence of both daily and occasional smoking amongst people in their 20s and their 30s. And looking at in Kerry, almost 13,500 people smoked daily in April 2022, which was 9% of the population, the same as the national figure. And the breakdown of that, the males, there was a greater number of males who smoked daily at 7,790 males compared to 5,707. So basically, there's 2,000 more males than females that smoke in Kerry. So we also had a volunteer question, and the last time we included a volunteer question was in 2006. So you can see that our volunteer figure for the nation was 711,000, and that was up 14%, and that was since 2006 now. We had the sporting was the highest volunteer type at 287,000 there, you can see, and that was up 6%. And the lowest that people were volunteering was political. So in Kerry, knowing that you're all football lovers, I was dying to look at the Kerry sporting. So so the volunteers in Kerry, there's 24,751, and it ranged from social and charity, religion, sport, political, and community. It's 1 minute. So there was 10,463 that were volunteers in the sports, and the average age of those volunteers for sports were 43.4. And then we have the smallest number is in the political arena, and that's 564. And the average age for those people volunteering was 54.9. In the community, there was it was 8,584. So at the average age of those volunteers were 49.6. And in the social and charity, there was 6,475, and their average age was 52.5. Excuse me. So sorry, I didn't mention and that's just a breakdown of the towns and the numbers that are volunteers and the percentage. So you can see that Tralee it's 4%, but like there's a huge number there of volunteers. And this is a breakdown of Tralee, and it's one of our mapping applications that I will show you. So this is the Tralee town, and it's broken down by small areas. So each of those little blocks are small areas, and you can see all the data, and you can very easily see where the volunteers are coming from. The darker numbers is the places where there's more volunteers, So I include this slide because at this stage, I'm sure you're fed up listening to me and all the statistics. And there's a lot that I haven't mentioned, and I just put that in just to show you. And then the next few slides are I will make them available to Mairead, are giving you a rundown of how to access. And I'm just going to flick through these and move to our website, and I'll show you on our website how to access the information. Just 1 moment. I'll just stop sharing for a second. So can we see our website there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Do you just want to move the do you want to move the Zoom over? Because
yeah, I'll move it over. Yeah.
Perfect.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
So this is our website. This is the CSO website, and there's various links, and you could get lost in all this information. So the easiest way to look at it is you have a green bar on the top and you have the word census. So there's 3 types of ways to look at census data. You can, and I'll go onto our census page. You can find data from our profiles. You can find data from our databases, and then you can find our data from maps. So the first one is our published report. So you see information about 2027 and previous census, but on the right here is Census 2020 and our published reports. So years ago, these would have been hardback books, but we didn't create any hardback books in 2022. And so all of these profiles represent a former book. So the summary report is the very first one, and that is where you would get a lot of your information. If you're looking for details on any of the demographic variables, you'd find them in here. So I'll just give an example. So we'll just open up diversity. So you open, this is so this would be citizenship, education, place of birth, migration, ethnicity, Irish travellers, and religion. So this is the release, and you have county press releases down here. So if you're looking for Kerry information, you can go down here. But if you go into so this would be our publication. So they all open up with an infographic, and these links at the side represent the power sort of chapters, if you like to say. So if you're interested in, say, citizenship, if you click on citizenship, you get information here, and a lot of time went into getting these very understandable, very easily read, understanding what we're saying, and each of them would have a graph or a table, and you notice that they all have links. So while the graph is there and you can turn off things on the graph, you have access to the data behind. And you can say similarly with the maps, you can see that there is all links, and these go to our database again, where you can see, you can hover over, you can see the maps. So it's a good, the first suggestion would go to the summary report, see is the information you're looking for, or then if you want to deep dive into, say, citizenship, you see what information is available, and you can see there is a lot of graphs, and always there's a link to the table and the information that we've. There is also a data chapter, and when you click into this data chapter, it gives you the main data that we used in the publication, but it's only a snippet. I mean, there's literally, I think, 60 tables of information. I'll show you here. So remember I said to go into the green bar, census, and then to go to the database, it's the database here, and your first link brings us into PXStat. So PXStat is where we have all our data, and if you browse to census, and then you can see that we have information on all of the years of census. If you go down to census 2022, you can see that the profiles is mirrored here. And you can see, like in the summary, we produced 133 tables. So a lot of the information is in there. So we'll go to diversity, and you can see here we have 60 tables, over 60 tables. So if you were looking for citizenship, if you put in citizenship, it lets you know that citizenship is in all of these tables. So to just to get to the census one, if you click on census, this will give you just the census information. And if you do a control F, a find, and if you put in county, it would give you information. That's what most likely you'd be looking for, county information. So we click on to one of these tables here. It's population, usual resident, and president of the state. So the idea of when you open one of these tables is to pick something from each of the boxes, pick everything from the boxes or a range of stuff from the boxes. So I'll just give you an example. So we pick everything, all the age group, we put in Kerry here, and we highlight Kerry, then we put in 2022, we'll put in population, and we just put in, say, the French. We just see the population of the French, and we view the table. So it brings up the table, and you can sort it. So you can see that the highest age group of French people in Kerry is between 25 to 34. But also, and you can download this table because it could be vast. You can download it to Excel or CSV. And also, there is 3 tabs here. There's a table, and then there's a chart and a map. So if we look at the chart and we say, okay, we're going to create a chart, and it's very quick, so don't worry. So we're going to do a column chart, and we're going to pick a chart, and we won't pick all citizenships and Ireland because that'll be too big and it'll skew your graph. So we pick a range of other countries, and what we say is we do a series, and we will pick we just pick the percentage for Ireland first. So we pick the percentage, we pick 2022, we put all ages, we put in state, and then we go down and we add a series. And you can go in and we'll say percentage 2022. We put in Kerry here. If you forgot to do something, it'll tell you. I'll give you an example. If I say here and I'm going to add a series, it's going to come up in red at the bottom and say, it didn't come up in red for the bottom. Hang on. It usually tells you if you haven't put in some of the options. So I'll put in Kerry and then view. Now there you go. It said I didn't put in the county of usual residence series 2. Oh, hang on a second. We're going to get this 2, and there's Kerry. Delete this one. So we have 1 series and 2 series, and then we just view. So immediately, well, it should have been quicker than that, you can see the population and the distribution of the population. So the state is the blue and the green is Kerry, and you can see that you have a high number of people from the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. You can see that there's a more Polish. You've got 2.2% Polish rather than Ireland. It's a great way to see the figures. And immediately when I saw this, I went, oh, there's I knew there's a lot of UK people in Cork. I didn't realise Kerry as well. And I said, they're probably retirees. So I went back straight away and go in and I changed this. I went to 65 and over, and I went to that series 2. I'll go to change it to 65 and over here, and then view again. And you can see I was right. There is a large. You can see that in a lot of 65 and over, there's very few people from different countries, different citizenship. So you can see there's Germans, So it's just a very quick way of seeing the data, and it's quite easy. And then the other option is the mapping, and here you can see you can put in the distribution countrywide of a particular nationality. We put in the Germans, and you can see, high proportion here. You can see it immediately rather than having to look at tables of data. So that's the PX stat. And the other option I told you, I'm looking at the time. I hope people don't have to leave. The other option I had was if you go into where we have our maps. So again, census, and we go into our interactive maps. We have 3 types of interactive maps. The first is small area population statistics. So what this is basically 45 tables of data by 8 different geography levels. So you have small areas, local authorities, electoral division, etc., etc. So, and you have 3 different years of data. So we'll put in a Tralee. And we'll go to, we'll put in electoral division of Tralee. Let's see. So here's the Tralee urban. Immediately you can see the information that we have. So we have the different breakdowns. If you click on it, you can see that you have 6,104 people in, and then also you can explore all the themes. You can look at, say, the housing there, and you can see I think 6 tables on housing. And again, if the graphs, you might be in this case, you might want to see the actual data, and each of these point to a table as well. So when you click on that table, you get all the electoral divisions in the country, so, and again, if you picked a different boundary level, you'd get all them in the country. So you have all this information. So you can see that you have information, disability, commute, all this information on that once electoral division. And excuse me, that breaks it down. So I'll just go back into another one. So we have urban profiles, and I gave you an example of those. Now, these are the same data that's in the stat map. And you can see that you can select a town, and I put it. So we'll put in Ballyhaig, and you can see we put in volunteers. Excuse me. And there you can see that the Ballyhaig is made up of one small area, and you have the number of volunteers in Ballyhaig. And the last one, I'm rushing now, is our geohives, and that is where I created the map on the vacancy, and it has 2016 and 2022 data, but it has all of those teams that we saw on the sat map earlier on, all of those by all the tables. So there's 45 tables available, and to create a map, I suggest you go straight down to resources and go to the page, and there's 3 small videos. And at this stage, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening to me and dealing with my pauses. And if there's any questions, please feel free to ask me.